Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the conversation today. Bronwyn, I do not know how to pronounce your last name. I just looked at it and I was like, we want to welcome our guest. Bronwyn, would you mind saying your last name?
Schweigerdt.
Schweigerdt.
Yeah.
Okay, that is easier than what it
I
looks.
know.
Mine's Woolsey, and everyone says it Woosley. They get in the S always.
Yeah.
It looks easy, but it's not. So welcome. We want to welcome our guest. Bronwyn is a psychotherapist and anger expert. Y'all, we're going to talk about anger today, which is a hot topic, pun intended. I think a lot of times we avoid topics like this. We don't want to feel anger. We don't want to let ourselves go to anger. And a lot of you listeners have been even taught that you shouldn't feel anger. It might mean something on a spiritual level. Maybe you don't have enough faith. Maybe you don't have enough spirituality. You don't have enough forgiveness if you feel anger. I can relate to that, unfortunately. And here's something else that just came to mind. When I was angry, and I didn't know why I was angry because I wasn't privy to what my husband at the time was doing, his acting out behaviors, but I just felt this anger because like my body knew. If I was angry or showed it, it was used against me. And then I'm the one that's wrong. And because I don't have cognitive knowing of what he's doing, I don't really know why I'm angry, but I know I'm freaking angry. So that dynamic even plays into this a lot that I think our listeners can relate to. So this is really cool to have you here and talk about anger. Would you mind? Is there anything else you want us to know, Bronwyn, about you before we dive in?
Oh, goodness. There's so much I could say, but I will say how I came to become a therapist in a nutshell is this is my second career. So I was not looking to go back to graduate school again and like reinvent myself. But I fell into a very, very profound depressive episode and I was desperate to find a good therapist. And I could not find a good therapist. And so I remember this is about 16 years ago, sitting on all these couches thinking to myself, Bronwyn, you are hardly functional right now, but I still think you would make a better therapist than this person. So I went back to graduate school, became a therapist, but that depressive episode, which was followed by a subsequent one that was even more pernicious, looking back, I now see as absolutely a manifestation of my own suppressed or what I call disassociated anger. And I started connecting the dots with my clients, most of whom have anxiety, not depression, but noticing, oh, their panic attack was right after something that should have made them angry, but they suppress it and they dissociate. And so I started seeing that. And I've even had a client with psychosis who no longer has any psychosis, but hers was also her disassociated anger at her mother. And so I just started seeing it over and over and over. Like when we were taught, Amy, the example you gave with your ex-husband is gaslighting you, but really what that's doing is creating shame for your anger. And so when we feel shame for our anger, or we feel like our anger is dangerous because maybe we learned as a toddler when we're going through the developmental differentiation stage where we say no and have boundaries with the parent, which is healthy and normal, maybe mom gave us silent treatment. Maybe she neglected us in efforts to let us know she's not going to tolerate that. And so we unconsciously learn, oh, my anger or my boundaries create abandonment. One or both of those things where we start dissociating from our anger and we bring that template that we learned as a child, that anger is shameful or it makes us alone at the end of the day. We bring it and it follows us through the rest of our lives. And unless we wake up and do something about that, we will get mentally sick. We'll get physically sick. I actually did a continuing education unit recently for other therapists. And I did research because you have to show a lot of research to get approved by the EPA. And I actually was glad I did all the research because I found there is so much peer-reviewed published journal research showing that dissociated anger with what is termed alexithymia, which just means keeping it all inside. I like to call alexithymia a big word for what my clients say, holding it all inside, right? So when we hold it all inside, it actually makes us not just mentally ill with depression, anxiety, etc., but physically sick. So they're showing that people with autoimmune disorders have way higher levels of alexithymia, including children with type 1 diabetes are more alexithymic, meaning keeping it all inside, not talking about their feelings, than children who do not have type 1. That's not saying that's always the case, but the relationship is very strong. So they're showing women with multiple sclerosis have higher alexithymia. There's just so many examples of this. So yes, our anger, when we pretend like we're not human, because all humans have anger, that's a natural, healthy thing. When we like to pretend we're a robot, it makes us sick physically and mentally.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You just amen to everything you just said. And yes, 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 yes.
Did you feel like, Amy, as you sat there and listened, like your mind just kept expanding?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've been trained that we need to feel our feelings and we need to make room for them. And I've been trained on anger, but the lens through which you just presented that, I found myself going through my files and my friends and my family and my clients and going, oh, that fits. Oh, that fit. Oh, that fits. And so, yeah, I almost need to just sit here for a minute and like, even what you just said, if we ended this podcast right now, would have been valued.
Put a period after that, wrap it up. You said, when you said panic attacks, immediately the connection was, I mean, I used to have panic attacks in that first marriage all the time, to the point where I didn't know it was. And I admitted myself to the hospital several times because I was like legit panic attack.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes so much sense because once I got out, hello, no more panic attack.
Yeah.
My autoimmune disease, like I've been digging in, and we've talked about this to our listeners for a while. They've been with me on my journey, but the more I have learned about the body and the impact that trauma and all of the nuances around it has impacted my body, my central nervous system, my cortisol levels, like all the things, it has been quite a laborious journey, but very, very helpful to validate what you just said, that I'm really not broken or crazy, that my body has held on to so much that I have over the years told myself I shouldn't be experiencing feeling like anger.
And you know what? I want to turn that around on the flip side, like the good news, because people will say those kind of things and then they'll take away like, oh, my body has all this inside of it. It's going to take like years to undo it. You know what? It doesn't take years. It can take a minute. And I mean that. I'm not even exaggerating, because that's the good part. And I talk about this on my podcast, where we can express, and what that word express for our feelings, meaning externalize, expel our feelings that are stagnating inside of us through words. And that's how we do it. So we can, of course, we can confront someone directly, but for most people, the most toxic people, that is pretty much counterintuitive for the most part. Like a parent, we're not going to say, hey, mom, you really hurt me, blah, blah. And most parents, the most toxic ones, usually don't validate them. See, you're right. I'm so sorry. So they will defend, they will deflect, they will reverse victim and offender, but we can write a fantasy letter to that parent and we can put it all out there. We can express, externalize, expel these feelings that are stagnating inside of us for ourselves. We don't need anyone to give us anything. And we can just write that fantasy letter, which I always encourage people to find someone to validate it, to just listen, like a good friend, a good therapist, to just listen and just validate and just go, oh my God, you're totally right to feel that way. So that's one example. We can do what I call a fantasy exercise, where we say to that bully, which is often the parent, not always, it could be a partner, where we just say in fantasy, I hate you. And a lot of people have a hard time. That's my parent. I can't say it. And here's what I say. This exercise is not to intentionally foster hatred with some kind of goal to bring about retribution. this exercise is to expel something that's already inside. It's poisonous, making you sick. And that is the goal. It's a fantasy, and it's not going to hurt them because they're never going to know you said this. And here's the thing. Humans are messy creatures. We can feel love and hate for the same person all at once. So, Mom, I love you. And you know what? I also hate you. And that makes me free. So we can do things like this for ourselves.
Well, and it's unpacking the layers. And so it's like you mentioned in your bullet points, like cultivating a relationship with anger. What you're talking about in these experiences helps build that relationship, getting to know anger. Why is anger there? Allowing it to be heard. Like you said, having a voice. Oftentimes in a brain spot session, when people are giving voice to this, and I'll hear like, I hate you. They're expressing it and giving voice. And then immediately I'll notice there's the collapse to, then there's the grief, there's the pain. And so sometimes letting that out allows us to go to that underlining emotion underneath it as well that sometimes gets ignored.
Yes. I just had a client the other week. She was actually in a manic episode when we met, which I've never seen or experienced before. It was doable though. I was able to have the session with her. She had previously been so depressed that it was actually easier to work with her when she was more manic. But I encouraged her to do that I hate you, Mom exercise with me. And she finally did it. And she did it like 10 minutes before the end of our session. She went back to just normal. It was like witnessing a miracle on video. Her mania was just gone those last 10 minutes. And I said at the end, it seems like you're not manic anymore. She goes, oh, yeah, I think you're right. I feel great. I feel great. And that was, I believe, that anger was finally expelled, or that hatred, I should say, was dislodged from her that she had been carrying, and it was making her depressed, and now it was making her manic.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who, trying to think of the right words, but has a strong aversion to even the word hate? Because I think like I had a physical response when you first used the word hate. And then, so I've been sitting here while the two of you have been talking, like mulling over, like, ooh, I have something here.
Yeah.
So when you have somebody, and I'm thinking of a few particular clients that they are so removed from this that what you're talking about feels intense or scary or even unattainable.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that, Alana, because here's how I view hate and all these emotions. Hate historically in Western culture, hate and love have come to mean like a sentiment that we feel. Like I feel hatred or I feel love, but it does not equate to an action. And yet I think historically love and hatred have really been more actions than sentiments. And those are very different things. If someone I depend on who's like a parent who I expect to nurture me fails to nurture me chronically, they're actively hating me, my natural response is going to feel hatred towards them. Whether I am choosing to acknowledge it or not, it's there. And that, I believe, is honestly God-given, because hatred tells us to stay away. Hatred is a warning to say, you know what? That is really bad. Anger also acts as a warning as well.
Well, it's so interesting because what's going through my mind is the concept you're talking about is we don't choose the feelings.
No, that's right.
It comes to you. That emotion that comes is automatic. It's not chosen.
It's involuntary. Yes.
Yeah. And then what we choose to do with that is where we completely have power. So do I shove it down and store it? Do I move it into an action? And I think a lot of times there's this deep fear of, if I feel hatred or if I feel anger, then I am going to act with hatred and I'm going to act with anger. And you don't. For our listeners, I want you to hear you. We're not saying you have to act in these ways, but we are removing this from you carrying this inside of you. I love that you said poison. And we're getting that poison out of us. And there's really healthy ways to do it. And there's really toxic ways to do it.
Yeah. Thank you for making that distinction. Our feelings are involuntary. And we don't need to judge them. In fact, we should not judge our feelings. They're not good. They're not bad. They're not right. They're not wrong. They're feelings. What we do with them, we need to judge how we act. If we respond with love and detach and say, you know what? I can't be around you. This is too toxic. I love you too much to allow you to continue to hurt me like this. Then that is an act of kindness. It's not going to make the other person happy, but it's safe and it's good. And we are responsible for those actions.
I love that responsibility for ourselves. Yeah.
I like phrasing emotions or information and then just learning to understand what information that's giving. And anger is one of those that is trying to give us some really good information about something that isn't okay, that we need to move from. Anger is that action emotion. It's wanting us to do something, which is why oftentimes processing anger and getting more informed about it, getting our body involved can really help with that. What are some things that you would suggest or have done or encouraged to facilitate that?
Yeah. So I start with just encouraging people, you know what? Let's just heal our relationship with anger. So anger, like you're saying, Amy, emotion is really a compound word. It's emotion. And emotions are designed to move us.
It's just energy in motion. It's
Energy.
keep
Yes,
moving.
there we go. So yeah, anger is designed to move us forward. And so we start with looking at it, having that perspective like, oh, I can feel angry right now. That's okay. That's okay. That's not good or bad, right or wrong. I'm not going to judge it. It's there as a warning. It's there to give me wisdom. So where is it? It's right here in my chest. That's usually where it appears. Not always, but let's say it is. Where am I feeling it? I'm feeling it in my chest. Okay. I'm feeling my anger. What does my anger need from me right now? It wants to create a boundary with this person, or it wants me to confront this person and say, hey, Amy, we said we're going to meet at 9, but it's 9:40. What's going on? And that's me channeling my anger out of my body in a healthy way. That's me being responsible with my anger. Do you feel like I'm angry? No, because I'm saying, hey, what's going on? But it is channeling my anger. It's putting it to use energetically and holding you accountable. And if you say, hey, what are you talking about, Bronwyn? That's not true. Then you might feel a little bit of my anger. But I am putting that anger to use. So it's not stagnating inside of me. And then I have a depressive episode. It's not going to make me sick anymore.
So what would you say to those that are in a situation where communicating that isn't going to be helpful or useful? Kind of like the example that you used earlier with parents. And so we have all of these emotions. We have anger. Mine's always right in my jaw.
Yeah.
And we are not in a position to be able to communicate that, but we still need to express it and our body be a part of that expression. What would
Yes.
you say then?
Yes. So like with someone like a boss where we can't like, hey, John, what's up, boss? We can't do that. We can hold them accountable, let's say by documenting. Let's say John continues to belittle me. I can document every single time that happens. Maybe I can get someone else to witness it silently over time. I'm documenting it. I'm creating like a file, and then I go above his head and hold him accountable. So that's something I can do. For example, if that person is unsafe to confront or it's impossible to have a boundary with. And then another thing that I've talked about recently on my podcast with really toxic people, we can't just hold them accountable in kind of a covert way. So let's say I am going to a family gathering and I don't want to miss out just because there's one really toxic person there. And I'm going to have to hear that toxic person say toxic things. So I could just look them in the eyes. And let's say her name is Laura. I can say, when she says her thing that I know she's going to say about me or someone else, I can say, Laura, we all know that's not true. And that's it. That's me bringing about accountability. It's bringing shame to her. But her shame is just me being a mirror and giving her a true reflection of herself in that moment. And that I don't have to be cruel to do that. I don't have to respond in kind. Let's say she's cruel. I don't have to be cruel. I can just initiate eye contact, stay with that eye contact and say, I know that makes you feel better right now to humiliate this person, but that's not okay. And I'm just being a mirror.
It's so hard for a lot of people to do, to be able to give voice to that. And I know that part of your message is voicing whatever we're feeling. And I want to validate those that are hearing this and be like, oh man, I could never do that to Laura. Laura would have my ass whipped up. Anyways, that could not happen, right? There's so many of those circumstances that like, I mean, I've got about 10 names. I'm like, yep, nope, can't do that. I could, it just would more than likely create more toxicity if that person isn't a safe person in my life. What do you say to those that are feeling like, oh man, I can't do that?
I think underneath that, because I've definitely been there where I would be like, I can't do that. That sounds ideal, but I'm never going to be able to do that. But I think underneath all that is we personally feel responsible for other people's feelings, and we're afraid of what they're going to do to us. For me, I feel like I was reborn the day about a year and a half ago, or no, 2.5 years ago now, when I finally saw my father and realized, okay, he's throwing his tantrum like he does, and he wants me to feel responsible for his feelings, because that's why adults throw tantrums. And before, I would totally have catered to him and stopped what I was doing. And this time I just saw him and I said, there's my dad throwing that temper tantrum. Those are his feelings. They're his feelings, not mine. They're his responsibility, not mine. What am I feeling? Wow, I'm feeling really annoyed that like an 80-year-old man is throwing a little temper tantrum in a nice restaurant right now and trying to make me feel responsible for his feelings. I'm really annoyed. What do I need to do with that annoyance? I'm going to just ignore him and keep talking to the waiter to try to get that table over there, which is what he doesn't want me to do. And I did it. And it felt like I was reborn that day. It felt like, oh my God, I needed to do this 45 years ago. And I finally did it. And since then, when people want to manipulate me by making me feel responsible for their feelings, I'm just like, I see what you're doing and it's not going to work. So there's like a force field now between me and them, an invisible force field.
This concept, I feel like, could be a whole episode in and of itself. And I'll just say for our listeners, Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, gives you 10 hours of how to do what you just talked about, because that slows it down on how you separate your response from their response, and you learning how to stop taking responsibility for others' emotions, because a lot of times we are taught to do that and trained to do that. So just go check out that resource. We're going to take a really fast break and tell you about some of the things coming up at Choose.
I'm very excited to tell you about the Unmasked Intensive we have coming up in May. It's May 13th through the 16th in Spanish Fork, Utah. The name of the intensive is Unmasked Paths to Authentic Masculinity. Let me tell you some of the things we're going to accomplish. We're going to explore some root causes, like at the end of the day, what's underneath this behavior? What's the why behind it? What's the insights into understanding why my behavior existed, the one that kept me in secrecy and hiding? We're going to embrace vulnerability. So we're going to confront a lot of the struggles of that non-judgmental space so you can foster more authentic connections with the people that you love. We're going to realign with your values. We're going to learn new coping strategies, and we're going to forge some authentic connection. We're going to build a lot of camaraderie to hear that happens. I wanted to share with you what previous participants have said about this transformation. So here's what one guy said. I'm just going to read it to you. I loved the connection with those around me. It was eye-opening to learn how to open up and show love for myself and be okay with what's going on inside of me, no matter how hard or ugly I may see it. I specifically remember this man saying this and just being astounded by like, wow, if I'm around people that really open up, what can I explore and learn about myself in this intensive? He found it to be really eye-opening. So anyway, for more information and reserve your spot, go ahead and visit our website and we'll provide some information for you. And then take the time to invest in yourself so you can start to lean in a more authentic way in your life. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Okay, and now back to the episode. a stepping stone for me that helped me get more to where you were talking about. And I'm still human and learning and have to put in work on this. But what I had to do for me is I had to start getting honest and real with myself. And so before I ever could get to this place where I started voicing this to other people, I'd send myself text messages and I would say, I am angry right now. And this behavior that just happened was not okay. And my anger is okay and justified. And I would tell myself, because what I did for so long is when my anger was aimed at my significant other, and I didn't want to be mad at him, and I didn't want distance between us, I would use this term, they call it betrayal blindness, where I would make myself blind to what was really happening because then I could feel okay with him. And so this form of, I don't see it, it's not happening, shove it all down, was what I lived by for decades. And so in part of coming out of that, I had to start with me and go, okay, that wasn't okay. And I am angry. And I had to own that with myself. Those text messages to myself went on for a good 6 months before I was really able to take that next step and start going, no, that isn't okay. So if you're like me, where you need maybe extra work on this, that was one tool that helped me take off the blinders for myself.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I have a tool that I use. And again, I don't mean to shamelessly promote my podcast, but that's why I do this podcast, is so that people can do these exercises for themselves, not just be my clients, but just hear them. So I have one exercise I do, I call an integration exercise. And so I lead listeners or my clients, and I do this for myself as well, where we actually go back to what I call an imprinting memory, where let's say little Alana learned to dissociate from her anger because she saw mom do the abandonment, do the silent treatment when she showed any kind of boundary with mom when she was 2, let's say. And once you go to that imprinting, well, let's do this. Would one of you like to do that with me right now? So we can make an example for listeners to do for themselves. You don't have to divulge anything you're not comfortable with. It can be pretty innocuous, actually.
I have a memory specific that comes to
you have a memory. Okay. Most people don't have a memory. So I was going to say, what I do is what leads to these memories is our triggers in the present, or what makes us triggered in the present. So I'll give an example of myself. One of my triggers is when I'm with my husband and I'm talking to him and he's not making eye contact with me. Now, I know intellectually he is listening because he shows me that he does. But when he's looking away, it triggers little Bronwyn. And so what I do, like an hour later, let's say after we were talking, I will just sit and reflect, and I'll close my eyes. I'll imagine that's happening right now. And then I'll feel whatever I'm feeling in my body. And I'll feel like something in my gut, usually. Oftentimes we feel it in our gut. And so I'll just keep my eyes closed. I'll just focus on that sensation in my gut. And then I let my mind passively float back to the earliest time I felt that same sensation. And so that is how we often can arrive at an early imprinting memory. And so that's what gets us there. But Alana, since you have an imprinting memory, let's go with yours.
Well, but I don't. So I had a memory, but what it is I had a memory of being in like junior high and getting mad it was an old alarm clock. It didn't work. And I got so mad, I like hit it with my hand and I hurt myself. And it scared me that there was that anger that felt like it came out of nowhere. And like that stuck with me because I have a dad who threw a TV out the window. He threw plates down the stairs. He had this explosive anger. And so when I, in junior high, because this alarm clock didn't work, got mad and hit the alarm clock and hurt myself, then there was this like, oh, I am not going to be my dad. And there was a big shut it down.
Oh.
So my guess is there was probably other stuff younger
Yeah.
Something happened to me that day that there was a shutting down that I just explicitly
That makes sense.
remember.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with that memory then, if that's okay. Okay. So I'm going to have you close your eyes. I'm going to have you picture maybe 12-year-old Alana, who is freaking out because she is thinking she's just like her dad. And I want you to picture her in your mind's eye. And I want you to imagine that you go to her. So adult Alana enters that memory, goes to young Alana, and gets down on her level and looks her in the eyes. And I want you to imagine you talk to her and you say, young Alana, I see you. And I see how afraid and shameful you feel right now. Because you think, because you have this kind of anger, that you are just like your dad. And that is, in your mind, the scariest, most shameful thing ever. And I see all that. And I don't blame you for feeling that way. Of course you feel that way. But I need you, young Alana, to know what I know now. And I need you to see what I see. I need you to see how different you actually are from your father. I need you to see that you have empathy, not just for yourself, like he does, that his only empathy is for him. And you are a person who is respectful of other people and shows empathy towards others, unlike him. I need you to see that you are kind and you are compassionate. And even the fact that you're having this response to your own anger right now, your father would never have that response, but he should. And I need you to see how very, very different you are. And young Alana, I need you to see that your anger is not shame, that you are not shame, that you are just a human. And your anger is there as a warning sign. It gives you wisdom for something that you need to know so you can move forward in a way that is healthy and productive for you and for others by creating boundaries and assertiveness and accountability. And so, young Alana, we're going to take all that shame you feel right now and we're going to put it in this big cardboard box and we're going to give it to your dad because this is not your shame. This is his. And so we're just going to return to owner and say, here you go, Dad. I'm realizing this isn't ours. This never was. This is yours. And do with it what you will. But it's not mine. And you just take young Alana, say, you know what, young Alana, I'm going to take you by the hand right now. And I'm going to walk you right out of this place because this is not a good environment for a sweet young woman like yourself. And I'm going to bring you to safety. And you just walk her by the hand right out of that house and you close that front door firmly behind you. And you say, here we are, young Alana. And we're together. And I'm so sorry that I have abandoned you for so long. But I'm back now because I'm realizing that I am responsible for you and that your feelings matter to me. They are my priority. And I am going to validate your feelings and I am going to meet your needs. That's my job. And I'm going to attune to you consistently. I am going to be that trustworthy mirror that gives you a true reflection of you from here on out. And I'm going to give you the only reflection you can trust. And you belong to me. And I am so pleased with you. And you are so delightful to me. And we're a unit now, you and me. And we're going to make up for lost time. And we're free now. And we're here in the light of day where everything is clear. And it's a new day for us.
That was beautiful. There's two pieces that really just resonated. I didn't know, like you had mentioned shame before, but I didn't know how much shame was attached to that until slowing that down and going back to that place. And that box that I pictured was like as far out as my hands could hold. Like it was a big box of shame.
Yeah.
So just seeing that, feeling that, and handing that back was huge. But the other part was that reconnection to self. Like the validation at the beginning, I was like, "Ooh, this is nice. That's good." But that wasn't anything compared to this reconnecting again to myself. That piece of it, I'm just so glad that you did that exercise and slowed that down for me personally. But for our listeners, just to hear those different pieces of that and what that actually sounds like, because it's different to talk about it and to experience it.
How do you feel in your body right now, Alana?
I want to say calm, but it's grounded. Like I feel like my whole body sinking more into my chair. My feet feel more in the ground. I feel more grounded and integrated, I would say. That was good.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for letting me do that.
Would you mind taking the next couple minutes and talking just a little bit more about the correlation to shame then?
Yeah. If emotions are designed to move us, shame is not an emotion. Shame is a feeling. But there's no movement with shame. Shame debilitates. Shame makes us stuck and keeps us stuck for a lifetime. And the worst thing about shame, actually, I call shame the enemy of humanity because shame tells us we're not allowed to be human because humans make mistakes. And you know what? We're really good at making mistakes. But the best part of being a human is learning from those mistakes. But shame says, no, no, no. You don't get to make mistakes because if you make a mistake, you are a mistake. And I can't. And so we make lots of mistakes because we still are human, but we never learn from that because we dissociate from all those feelings. It says we're all bad. And shame actually makes us dissociate from ourselves. Like it severs, like Alana, you said, you felt connected to yourself or reconnecting to yourself. Shame severs us from our very core, like our soul, if you will. And I personally was, I like to say, a victim of shame for most of my life until maybe about 4 years ago. So I was going for a run one day, and I think my brain was just kind of processing all these things unconsciously with my own clients and my own childhood and shame. And I was at a stoplight and I closed my eyes and I pictured my 10-year-old self sitting at a dining room table. And my dad would mock me every night, starting at age 10 until I left for college, every single night. And I pictured my adult self going in and saying, little Bronwyn, let's put all that shame in this big cardboard box and let's return it to him. It's his shame. And I did that. And something in me just shifted so profoundly. I felt like I was able to feel myself, fill out my own core. After that, I realized that I hadn't been in me. I had been detached from myself or exiled from my very self. And after that exercise, I felt like I trusted myself, like I could trust my gut. And funny enough, like a year later after that, someone in my life who was in an authority role, a role of authority, actually gaslit me and devalued me and brought me into a meeting and just had a litany of all these things he was trying to shame me with. And I just sat there like, I know what you're doing. I know exactly what you're doing right now. Whereas the old Bronwyn would have just taken it all in. There would have been no boundary, invisible force field between me and this person. I would have been like, oh my God. And I would have just sunken down. But this new Bronwyn was like, oh, I see what you're doing. And I had that force field. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is your shame. You're trying to deflect it onto me and it's not going to happen.
I love that. It really is an amazing experience. I have a similar experience where someone, who was close to me, and I always responded just very shame, very fixer or whatever, putting a language and clearly seeing what this person is doing in the moment, because years ago it would be afterwards, even like after the conversation, be like, oh, and then you go to the, I could have said this and I should have said that. But to be in the moment, present, with how this person is showing up, gaslighting or whatever, manipulating in those destructive behaviors, to see it and you use the word force field it. I love that. And just not absorb that, not take that in. And what I noticed in my experience that the first time I could clearly see what was happening and I didn't devalue me. There was
Yes.
no devaluing. There was no,
Yeah.
which leads to shame. Like there was none of that. That was so guarded because I could clearly see, which is why psychoeducation is so important, which is why learning how to put a language to these destructive behaviors is also so important.
Yeah.
So that when you practice and practice, you'll have that moment where you can see it live. I'm finding it hard to describe with work what that was like,
Yeah.
but it was definitely eye-opening.
Empowering, I would imagine.
It's very empowering because it's like, oh yeah, I'm not falling for that anymore.
One of the words, Bronwyn, you used was free. And when
Yeah.
you said that, oh, like I felt that in my body of like, yes, being free from their choices, being free from their reactions, being free from their feelings, and free to feel mine. And so there's just, yeah, such an empowerment in that. And I know we're getting to the end of our time. Thank you
Yep.
for coming and sharing what you've learned. Is there any last final thoughts you would like to leave with our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say being true to ourselves. I used to approach that as like selfish. I used to conflate that with being selfish. But being true to ourselves is not selfish. In fact, when we flourish, when we do right by ourselves, we flourish. And when a tree flourishes, if you think about it, that tree provides shade, it provides shelter, it provides habitat, it even provides fruit, if it's a fruit tree, for so many creatures, thousands of little creatures and even human. And the world is a better place when that one tree flourishes. And if we are true to ourselves, if we learn to do right by ourselves, if we exile that shame from us so we can come into who we were designed to be and flourish, we're going to create a better world. So there's nothing inherently selfish about
I love the imagery and what a beautiful message. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And I'm going to encourage our listeners to go check out Bronwyn's podcast and YouTube channel. So, as always, thank you for hanging out with us this week. We look forward to seeing you all next week. I'd love to share with you what's upcoming, and we have something really unique coming up in June. So, for those of you who are in a healing profession who is helping take care of other people, therapists, coaches, especially, but even if you're a nurse working in the medical field, if you spend your time catering to everyone else and holding their pain and helping them through their hard, we have an intensive just for you. This is called Heal the Healer. And I love all my intensives, but this one holds such a special place in my heart because in Heal the Healer, it's where the healer gets to come and for a moment set everything down and let you be taken care of. And this isn't where you're going to come do a ton of workshops and lots of learning and have to stretch your brain. It's just where you get to come relax. You get to kick your feet up and have other professionals there ready to take care of you and cater to you. We have a gorgeous lodge house resort property that's all ours that has pools and saunas and ponds and paths and trails, and it's tucked in the Wasatch Mountains. We have a gorgeous place to stay. All of your meals are included. Activities are included. There'll be time for fun if you want to participate in that, and also time for downtime and rest. And best of all, you get that connection with other strong women who are holding it all together for somebody else and who are ready to be taken care of. So invest in you. Take care of you. We would love to have you there. I would love to hang out with you and come with us in June to Heal the Healer.